glitch. Thank you so much for joining us in the Coffee Talk room for our 11 o'clock presentation. My name is Morgan Johnson, and I'm going to be hosting this session today. And I'm super excited to introduce our speaker. With us we have Dr. Andrew Shean. He is the Chief Learning Academic Officer at Bridgepoint Education, and he's here today to talk to us about digital presence. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Shean.
Hey everybody, thanks for being here. It's exciting. I'm going to try my best to do some discussion and not just talk at you, but I'm pretty passionate about this topic, so if I get on a diatribe, stop me. But perhaps more importantly, who's seen the Star Wars trailer? Huh? I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, so I told myself that for the rest of the year I'm going to have a Star Wars picture in every presentation, so here's this one. So, Morgan shared a little bit about me. I'll just quickly share my license picture. This gives you a sense of how I feel on the inside. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about digital presence in the online classroom. We'll define it, talk about why it matters, and then we'll share some different levels. At each different level, I'll share some ideas I have, but most importantly, I'd like to hear from you. What ideas do you have? It's a coffee talk, so that cross-pollination is huge. And then lastly, we can kind of talk about where do we go from here. So that's the intent. But if you'll indulge me, I'd like to tell you a story that has to do with LOL cats. And I don't know if those of you have remember LOL cats or if you have kids and they're into them, but long ago, I was in charge of online learning and ed tech at a large suburban school district, DePauw Unified, which is near San Diego. And one of the first jobs I had was the superintendent tasked me with looking into the learning management system and figuring out which of the thousands of teachers in Poway were really leveraging media well and getting a lot of action in their core shell. Now, granted, they were face-to-face, but a lot of them were doing some blended learning. And so I went in there and did a lot of digging, and I found this one teacher who, for whatever reason, was just off the charts. And I went in there thinking, oh my gosh, this data is just insane, and this guy's got to be doing all kinds of crazy high-tech stuff. And it actually was really simple. He had the homework assignment posted in his class every night, and then every day he'd post a new LOL cat. It's really simple, but it drew people in. And my point I want to make is that sometimes when we think of kind of the ed tech revolution that we're in, that everything we do inside the classroom needs to be really high tech, high gadget. It really doesn't. There are very simple things that we can do that can create an impact, a presence in our courses. And so the LOL cat for me is a reminder of that, and I wanted to share it with you. So the second thing that I want to say is that you can design the best course ever. And there can be self-paced aspects to it. There can be adaptive learning. It's never going to replace the power of an instructor, a powerful instructor. And the example I want to give is of Jaime Escalante. And those of you, who've taught K-12 or are very familiar with K-12 probably have heard of Jaime Escalante. He's a famous calculus teacher who taught at Garfield High School in inner city LA and really transformed the lives of hundreds and hundreds of students who came from poverty, lived in the ghettos, and didn't believe in themselves, didn't believe they could ever do calculus or even go to college for that matter, and he changed that. And in Disrupting Class, a book by Clayton Christensen, he talks in chapter 5 with Bill Gates about, well, what if we just went in and filmed all of the Jaime Escalantes of the world, and we just simply plugged them into online classrooms all around or made them free. We'd solve the calculus problem. And there's something drastically wrong with that perspective, which is that's not what made Jaime Escalante great. What made Jaime Escalante great, yes, in part he was a great calculus teacher, and I'm sure if you videotaped his lessons, they would be valuable. But he was great because he cared, because he spent time motivating, inspiring. He spent time making a difference in each one of his students' lives, making things relative, right? So the power of an instructor will never go away. And yet in the online classroom, we have to think about how we create that kind of presence when we can't do it in a face-to-face environment, maybe some of the way that some of us are used to. So that really begs the question, which is, what is digital presence then? How do we become Jaime Escalantes in the online classroom? And so what I'd like to do just for a second is take a pause, and in the chat, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think the definition of digital presence is. What does it mean to you? Yeah, good. We've got some good definitions. Yeah, so being present, Tisha, that's a good one. Creating an environment in which students realize, understand, feel the presence of a faculty member. And think of the opposite of that, Tisha, right? Like, imagine an environment where the student feels like it's missing that presence. It's just a static environment that doesn't have any kind of warmth or engagement or motivation. We don't want that. We want the opposite of that, right? Yeah, very good, Stephanie. Making connections, engaging learners, creating a community, a sense of camaraderie, right? Absolutely. You know, one of the things that blew me away was, you know, I think it was about 10 years ago, MIT announced that they were going to open up all of their classes. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is the secret sauce, right? Like MIT, you know, one of the more renowned higher ed institutions in the world is going to open up everything they have for everyone, right? And overnight, people will just learn how to be scientists and engineers, right? No. And what was so profound about the fact that that didn't happen is it speaks to how do people really learn. And I would argue that the power of the faculty and of the learning community at MIT is the secret sauce, not just the content. So this is really, really important. Well, great. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, and Wendy, real quick, having a conversation, absolutely. Dialogue is huge. So what I want to do is I want to share a couple of strategies that I've used and that I have found to be valuable. And I'm calling it level 1 because I think these are strategies that everybody can use. And the idea, the intent here is to leverage these strategies to cultivate an environment in the online classroom in which you, the faculty member, can transmit yourself as being present and actively engaged with the students. And it's the beginning seedlings of creating that warmth, that environment that's engaging and motivating, where dialogue and all that sort of stuff can transpire. Whereas Stephanie said a community can envelop, all right? So this is level 1, things we can all do. All right, number 1, and I apologize for the old school picture. I should have gone into my current class and snagged one. But I think quotes are a really simple but powerful way to transmit, right, certain messages. There are things that great, wonderful thinkers can say that sometimes are more powerful than things that we can say. I like this one by Carl Sagan. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. So again, humorous, I think sort of provocative. It's a nice way to start off the class. Quotes are a great, easy way to create a presence. The second is images, and I think Kathleen Kelly's on the line. I got to give her props. I stole this from her. It's a great example. This is a guidance that she did. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that a student comes into the online environment and they see this, whether it's an announcement, whether it's guidance, whether it's whatever, and I want you to imagine it without the image. It's pretty impactful, isn't it? Images are simple and powerful ways to create presence in the classroom, right? This guidance without the image is drastically different. The feeling that a student has on the other end is different. The image matters. Now, what I would argue to you is that not only is just using images important, but what kinds of images you use matter. For example, imagine you're a student and you walk into the classroom, or sorry, you enter online into the classroom, and the first thing you see is an image of a student that looks like you, and it says, I can accomplish anything that I set my mind to, right? Or something very powerful, right? That says sometimes more than words or things that we can say. Images are powerful. I'll never forget a couple years ago on Veterans Day, which is coming up, you know, and I sort of took it as a day off. Oh, I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to get a workout in. I'll go to the coffee shop. It was kind of all about me. And I picked up the newspaper and I opened it to a page, and it was of a young daughter crying, weeping over the grave of her father who had been, killed in battle. And I thought to myself, that image rocked me. It says more than words can ever say. In the online classroom, we can leverage images to say more than words can say. Images are a simple but powerful way to create presence. Now, jokes. I really like humor. The LOL cats is a good example of that, but there are so many funny things out there. YouTube videos, funny images, you name it. Jokes can be disarming. They can be used to address difficult topics in which students have fear of and create a place where they feel a little safer. An example for me is I was pretty freaked out in my doctoral stats class. I thought, if there's ever going to be a class where I'm just not going to figure it out and not get my doctorate, this is going to be it. And I had this wonderful professor, Dr. Richard Ansoft, and he used to have these outrageous examples that he'd use for us to have to apply stats to. And they were so funny and so outrageous, it kind of made me feel at ease. It kind of disarmed the intensity of the actual content. So I encourage you to use jokes and humor in your class. It's another simple but powerful way to create presence. I think personal stories are of great value too. Now there's a danger here, which is, I don't know how many of you have had that professor that spend 30, 40 minutes of a class telling you about, their kid's dance recital. I'm not talking about that kind of personal story. But you can share little tidbits of yourself to make you more human, make you vulnerable, make you approachable, make you create this bridge of connection with your students. An example here is I like to tell the story of my wife and I winning the Four Seasons $100,000 wedding, and I just give a little shout out here, and I even show the video where they announced that we were the winners. It was pretty funny. So again, just revealing personal tidbits of your life is a great way to create connection with your students. Now, I know a lot of you know this one, but emails are really important. And in part, not just sending like reminders, don't forget to do this assignment, or I've noticed you've not logged on, but what about like emails of inspiration? Like, hey, I noticed that you're really into this topic. Here's a video that I think you'll really like. Or, thank you so much for working so hard. I see that you're a single mother. I just want to share with you how much, I respect and admire you. So don't think of emails as just like housekeeping. Think of them as ways to make those deep, powerful, motivating connections. And again, think Jaime Escalante, right? All right. So those are a few of the strategies that I use. I'd love to hear from you. What are low-level tech strategies that you can use to create presence in the online classroom that can begin to cultivate that environment for students where they really feel like there's a community? So I'll pause for a second and see what people have to say in the chat. Yeah, nice. Jen, I think infographics are great. Ways of taking multiple tidbits of information and presenting them as one. Great. Yeah, I like that, Molly. Study breaks is great. And you think about it, when you go to a physical classroom, there's a time where you might have a break and share a laugh, or, tell a story, or just do something that might kind of ease people up a bit. Why not online? Yeah, daily inspirational videos is a great one. Love it. Good. All right. Well, I'm gonna take you to this next level, level 2. I'm gonna take you to the next level. Level 2 is for those people who are a little more comfortable with technology, maybe willing to dabble and experiment a little bit. And I think that you'll find that some of the strategies that I'm going to share with you may or may not work with your particular students, and they're just ideas, so take them with a grain of salt, but they're things that I've tried out that I find valuable. Now, I don't know, how many of you have ever heard of crazy talk? If you have, shoot a note in the chat. I'm just curious. Yeah, crazy talk is an example of software that now I believe is available in more ways than just crazy talk. But basically what it allows you to do is to take an image of anyone. It could be you, it could be a famous person, it could be whomever, and it allows you to do a voiceover and actually create the ability for the words and the mouth to move at the same time. So you can see in this case, Albert Einstein is looking at you. And so how I've used Crazy Talk before is, if I'm kind of feeling like the discussion forum's going a little bit dry or boring, I might respond to the student as if I'm Albert Einstein and ask a question from his point of view. Or if I'm teaching an education class, maybe I have like Pablo Freire or something, or Miles Orton, or an educator that I really am inspired by, be the one that does it. And you can be funny too. I got into this thing where if students weren't doing what they needed to do on time, I'd send them a Christopher Walken reminder to do your work, and just have them kind of look at them real weird like that. You'd be surprised at the kind of action that gets. And then I went through this phase where I was like taking popular culture and doing weird stuff like Charlie Shean. That didn't go over so well, so I'd recommend not doing that. So Crazy Talk. Now, how many of you have heard of Jing? Crazy Talk is actually, it's a cost to it. It's a good question. But I believe there are versions of that online now that you can do for free. When I used to do a lot of Crazy Talks, it was actually software you had to download to your computer, but I think it's different. If somebody can go research that and let me know, I'd be super curious. So those of you who have done Jing, you know that it's a 5-minute screencast. You can capture whatever's going on your screen, and you can do a voiceover to it. Now, I tend to be a little more on the provocative side. So in this case, I'm introducing myself to the classroom. I'm trying to be funny, and I begin with myself as a 2-year-old on learning how to be potty trained. Now, that doesn't go over well with everybody, so I'm not sure I'd recommend going with a beginning like that. But the idea is that I try to create myself inside the online classroom as somebody approachable, or has a sense of humor, or create that sense of connectiveness to the students versus like a dry 2-minute lecture about my bio. So that's an example of a 2-minute, Jing introduction. Now, the other thing that you can do with Jing is you can give video feedback. Now, I realize if you're in a classroom with 40 or 30 or large groups of students, it's difficult to go to each individual student and give them video feedback. But what I found is that if you can go into Waypoint and click on those outcomes, and then look and drill into specific areas within the criterion of those outcomes that students in general are struggling with, that's a great place to create a Jing video. So for example, if students are really struggling with citing a source, or they're really struggling with reflective skepticism, or they're really struggling with blah, 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 why not create a 5-minute Jing video and send it to the entire class to see? I tell you that written feedback is valuable, but sometimes doing a voice and actually demonstrating or showing students visually what they need to work on also adds an element. Now, second, I found that with particular students who might be really needing a little something extra, that video feedback can really be important. When I used to teach high school English, I found that for second language learners, doing a video in which they could pause or play it multiple times was very valuable as well. So the ability to give video feedback is another great way to leverage Jing, and a way, again, to create more of a digital presence. All right, so Web 2.0 tools, I'm sure a lot of you have used these before. Glogster, Prezi are just a couple of them. There's a ton of them out here. What Web 2.0 tools do you guys use in your classroom? I'd like to just real quick pause here, and I'm sure you guys have tons of them. This is sort of a selfish way for me to hear what's kind of the best and next and greatest out there. So I use Glogster and Prezi a lot. What tools do you guys use? Yeah, and just by the way, if you don't know what Prezi is, it's a great way to do a little bit more of a dynamic PowerPoint presentation in essence. Oh, nice. Yeah, Catherine, absolutely. And you know, I was pretty blown away by what Prezi can do. Our Constellation team just did a 5-minute video of sort of their services using Prezi, and it was pretty cool. I mean, they kind of flew to these different areas of their team, and then with each of those areas, there was like a little video or a graphic image or whatever, and it was just really smooth. Oh yeah, Barbara, Storybird's great, and Storybird's a great tool for students too. It's something that maybe within our assignments as we get more creative is a great way for them to actually express themselves differently. Oh yeah, Animoto's a great one. Love Animoto. Wendy, what's iJot? Create video message to students. Cool. Nice. You'll have to share that with me. All right, so I'm gonna I'll move on, but I love hearing all the different tools that people are using. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, we have guidance, and in some classes, we've been moving towards standard guidance, which, honestly, I'm a big fan of. But guidance doesn't just have to be in that quote-unquote section where we have guidance. You can give students guidance in many ways. You can give guidance in the form of feedback, in your announcements, in emails, in the discussion forum. And again, I point to the example of a level 1, the power of an image, and then think about not only the image, but also a video. So something as simple as curating video content that really adds an element to your guidance. And then in the addition of the image, now all of a sudden, I think you have something a lot more rich and engaging for the student to interact with, again, versus just text. And again, think of this related back to this bigger concept of digital presence, the ability for us, right, to leverage all this technology to create this experience for students in which they're motivated, inspired, engaged, right? That's the intent. So this guidance without and with the image and then without the YouTube video, I think is really different. Now, I'm going to throw out a caution. And the caution is something that, I'm sometimes not always mindful of, but I want to be, which is that our students are very busy, and that we can't throw too much stuff all at them at once. So an example would be if there were like 4 or 5 videos and like 7 images, it might be overwhelming. So while an image and a video I think is very useful, make sure that what you're sending them is of the utmost importance, is really relevant and impactful, and that we're not kind of giving them too much miscellaneous information just because aesthetically it might pop a little bit on the page. So again, I think usefulness. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to hear this, but I had this guru. Her name was Linda Foote, and I literally call her a guru. To me, she was like the Yoda of learning, and she was a mentor teacher to me. And she just had these little things that she did that are not rocket science, but I thought were so powerful. And this is an example of what she did before she had any of her students read a book. She'd do something really engaging to get the students interested in reading the book. So in this particular case, the students are reading a book about, World War II and Nazi Germany. And she plays this video for them that is so provocative, burning books. It tells the tale of some of the horrendous acts that were created there. It says things like, What Luck for Rulers That Men Do Not Think by Adolf Hitler, things that just kind of blow your mind. And it's only like 2.5 minutes. At the end of this video, I promise you, you will want to pick up that book and read it. And so think about that for a second. In our online classroom, do we do anything intentionally as faculty to engage our students in the reading materials? And if not, I think it's a great opportunity. Think motivation, think engagement, around actually reading, and don't assume that students just walk into the environment ready to dive in. I think we have to be kind of agents of inspiration. The other way I think that you can curate outside content and bring it in is that anytime that you have a really challenging concept, you can certainly create, like we talked about, a Jing video, and you could yourself explain it. But there is a lot of great content out there. I think the danger is for a lot of our students, and hopefully as we become more digitally literate focused, they become better and better at this. But in the absence of that, our students going out and trying to find really good content might be like somebody looking into the ocean for a grain of sand. There's so much out there. So for you, the expert, to go out there and curate what you think is the most useful, most impactful, most relative to the audience that you're trying to engage, video around a difficult concept, and then sharing it with your class or an individual student, I think is really powerful. The example here that, again, you probably won't be able to hear, it's this video that we found where students were really struggling with slope, and they did this entire sort of applicable example, and after you play it, the students really get what slope is. And I think this video is able to describe it in a way that I'm not sure we'd be able to. So again, the power of curating content and using it for video. The other thing I'll share is that, in our classes, we're asking students more and more to use technology, and not all of our students are necessarily savvy with technology. And so if you're finding that students are struggling with things, there's a lot of great video out there that can walk students step by step how to use different web applications. Hopefully we're doing that when we're creating the course, but if you're in a course where there's that's not there, please go out there and try to find good content and help your students better understand it through a quick 3 to 4 minute walkthrough. Let me just give you one example. Our new COO, his name is Chris Henn. One of the things that he's doing is he's listening to all of our student advisors, not all of, but selected groups of our student advisors' calls so that he can really get a sense of what students are experiencing and struggling with. And one example of one of the things that he listened to was a student who in their class was asked to go to iTunes U and find a specific video and watch it. And what he found was the student was really struggling. They had never used iTunes U before. The instructions in the classroom weren't as easy for them to understand, right? And the student was really frustrated. The advisor was trying to walk them through over the phone on it. And my guess is that that student was not alone. There were probably many students who were frustrated and struggling on how to use something in the absence of good instruction in the course development. And so you as the faculty member, when you see something like that in the classroom, go out there and find a great 2-minute, 3-minute video that really helps the students walk through how to do that. All right, so that's my spiel for Level 2, using Web 2.0 tools and videos and some different software applications to really enhance the student experience. Let me pause for a second and ask you, are there other examples that you have of things around a Level 2 that you think are interesting and are worthy of sharing? I'd love to hear from you. So I'll just pause for a second in the chat. Yeah, cell phones, the ways we use cell phones, I think, have a lot of merit too. The only challenge, I think, with cell phones is we've got some restrictions around our ability to directly contact students on them, and hopefully we work around that. But I agree with you. I think mobile devices and cell phones have a lot of merit. Yeah, polls are great, Wendy. I mean, one of the things that a master online teacher at another university that I work with did is mid-course, in every single one of her courses, she'd send out a poll, a survey monkey to students, and it would be 4 or 5 really simple questions, like how's the class going? Is there anything you're really struggling with? What's one thing you're really excited about? And she would kind of take all that and share it in a way that all students could sort of see the general information displayed, and as well as individual nuggets she'd take and she'd leverage it to inform her instruction. So I think polls have many ways that can be leveraged for good use. That's just one of them. So I love the polls. Yeah, poll everywhere is great. Good. Some other good ideas. Yeah. Google Forms are great. SurveyMonkey's great. There are a lot of great tools out there. Good. All right. I'm gonna share just a couple on level 3. I won't go too deep into it. And then what I'll do is I'm going to stop and we'll just have an open conversation. Anything that you guys want to chat about relative to the topic or anything else. So level 3. So I don't know how many of you have heard of digital storytelling before, but for me, digital storytelling is one of the more powerful ways that we can introduce students to the content. And I'm just going to pause for a second, and again, you probably won't be able to see this, but I'm going to give it a shot. Oh, good, you can see it. You won't hear the volume, but while it's playing, I'm just going to describe it for you. So this is one of those videos that when I first saw it, it was like a real light bulb moment, and it actually was really moving to me. It was a video that a student that was had recently moved from another country to the United States did. And what it's about is her experience being kind of in a cultural shock in her new school. And she describes in this digital story, how excited she is to move and be part of America and have an opportunity to learn and go to school in a way in which she wasn't really afforded that opportunity in the previous place she was living. But in this video, she described how difficult it was for her to adjust culturally. And she felt really insecure about her ability to communicate, the language deficit, and how that made her feel, caused her to have doubt, lack confidence. And it was really hurtful to hear her peers, for example, make fun of her language, make fun of her accent, and how that felt. And I just kept thinking to myself, how many of our students have a story, maybe not just like this, but have a story. Have a story about how they felt disenfranchised in their educational experience. Or maybe that they never felt like they could really be a college graduate because their family never really told them after high school comes college, right? Or maybe that they come from an environment in which college really isn't revered the same way it is in maybe some of our, cultures or families. So all of these different stories, motivating, inspiring stories that our students have, that I think can be shared in a way that's far more powerful than just introducing themselves the way that we often do in our introduction forums. What if we could create like this army of digital stories? And, I think a high-level example of this is some of the work that Ashford's done with telling these student stories, like the story of Eddie Henderson. To this day, if I'm ever feeling kind of frustrated or feel like I'm drowning in minutia, I'll literally go back and watch those stories of our students, and it just reminds me why we do what we do. So I just encourage you to research digital storytelling. It's a tricky one because it requires, obviously, the ability of our students to leverage media in a way that requires, again, level 3, a little bit more digital savvy. But the more and more that our technology becomes easier to use, the more and more that I think these kinds of things can become more real. And I'll give you just 2 examples. There's a program called UCU that we're using in one of our speech classes, and it makes for creating videos almost seamless. And the student has right there on the screen all the tools they need. And so this is just one example of what I think is going to be an increasingly easy-to-use technology world where things like digital storytelling, in the past you needed to have all these video editing skills to do, et cetera, but in today's and the future's age, I think will be a lot easier to do. So I encourage us to kind of think outside the box like this. Now, this is a picture of Jeff Borden. He used to be, one of the senior folks at Pearson, and he's a really engaging keynote, by the way, if you ever get a chance to see him at a conference. And what Jeff is doing is using a program called Zentation. And what Zentation does, essentially, it allows you to capture both yourself talking and split screen your PowerPoint or whatever other visual images that you'd want to use, mash them together, and then it sends out kind of this video lecture. We also, believe it or not, have a tool at Ashford that can do this, and even like UCU, make it really easy. It's called Cultura, and we're actually in the beginning stages of figuring out how to open that up to the masses, and I think you'll find that that tool will have a lot of relevance for you. So this, again, is an example of a level 3 tool. So those are just two. I'm going to stop there. Hopefully you don't feel like this. I'd like to just pause for a second and hear from you. What do you think of these digital strategies? What do you think about this idea of digital presence? Are there things you'd like to hear more about? Or you have more ideas that you'd like to share? I'll pause for a second and listen to the chat. Stacy, that's awesome. Yeah, Confluence and Overdrive, that's me. And I definitely need some help with some precision and sequence. So somebody can bring that in. Many thanks. Yeah, that's good, Stacy. Yeah, some of these tools, we need to figure out how to make them easy to use and free. That's something that I know is important to all of us, so something definitely to work on. Yeah, free good. I hear you. Can you see that?
Yes, they hit the search sharing.
Cool, Andrew. That's good to hear. Yeah, congratulations on finishing the NFE. Yeah, good. Yeah, Lori, absolutely. Storyboard's a good example of a way to do digital storytelling, and maybe not necessarily with all the higher level video editing. While people are talking, I'll share just one last tidbit, and then if there's no more chat or questions, we can wind down. I recently decided to teach again, and it's probably been about a year, and I really felt it was important for me to be relevant and to stay connected to our students and who they really are. And one of the principles I believe a lot in design is that we design with the end user in mind, and that is to say we design curriculum for who our students really are. And without teaching, it's easy to forget that. And so I decided I'm going to teach at least once a year. And so I started my class last week. And Kathleen Kelly, thank you again for all your help. It's EDU 498 with Kathleen Kelly overseas. And the minute that I got into the classroom, I got this email with all these materials, and it was just wonderful. But it was a source of great pride. And I want to describe, why I felt that pride. When many years ago, I think it was like 5 years ago, when we first came to Ashford, I literally looked around, and the College of Education is where I began. There was only a couple of faculty. It was Dr. Jeff Hall, myself, and Dr. Stephen Halfacre. It was three of us, for 20,000 students in the College of Ed. And what we saw was just tremendous opportunity to take what was a good model, but that just needed to be evolved. And it was almost like we didn't know where to go. There were so many things that we could do. And years later, I look at where we're at today, and it gives me a great sense of pride. And even looking at where I left off a year ago teaching, and when I opened up that classroom, a week ago, and saw just the difference in the student engagement, the difference in the content, the way the Writing Center was there, the way the library was there, the HTML design, the fact that I had a faculty member reach out to me to support me. There's so many things to be said. And I just wonder if sometimes all of us forget, because we're so busy every day, just how much of a difference that you've been able to make in this environment in a relatively short period of time. It was really apparent for me, and it was one of those moments of great pride. And Great Places to Work is something that, that our organization has taken on that's a focus for us. And one of the key pillars of Great Places to Work is pride. Pride in what you do, who you work for, and all that sort of stuff. And I have great pride in who we are and what we do. And just that experience for me really reminded me to the extent of that pride. And that's really a testament to all the great work that all of you do. So thank you. And I guess my only other thing I'd say is let's not stop. Let's keep going. You know, we had this dream long ago that we'd sort of be the Harvard of online. And, you know, some people will say, well, we don't have enough resources to be Harvard. You know, what about Target? No, I don't really want to be Target. I want to be the best online university in the world. And like that's the goal, and there's nothing else to go for other than that. So that's my belief, and I believe we can do it. So. Cool. Well, listen, everybody. Thank you for attending today, and thank you to this TLC team. I mean, this conference is unbelievable. It's a great way to bring everybody together, talk about a way to create digital presence among our community. You guys are living it, and I know it's a lot of hard work. So thank you all for the hard work that you're doing. Thank you guys who attended today. Let's keep making a difference for our students. Take care. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Andy. And for those of you that are on the line still, we're going to close this room for the next 2 hours, but we really encourage you to hop over to our keynote room. Dr. Newton Miller will be kicking things off at 11 a.m., so we will see you guys there. Thank you.